open the meeting and get through some of the basics so we can get on to the whole meeting. Okay, so it's 7:04. This is the Halls Road Improvements Committee meeting on January 14th at 7 p.m. And I am calling to order the meeting. And the first order of business is to approve the December 10th, 2020 minutes. Do I have a motion for that?
I wasn't at the meeting, so I shouldn't probably make the motion. I read them over; they look okay, but I wasn't there, so I couldn't officially do it correctly.
Yeah, I'll make the motion, Edie.
Okay, thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, so, and I don't know if David is Dave Kelsey? Is that you, Dave? So the first thing was to introduce Dave Kelsey, but he's not here yet. So, why don't we jump?
Edie, I just joined. I'm sorry.
Oh, great. Okay.
I'm not sure what was taking so long on my end or the Cisco end, but I'm here now.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so I wanted to welcome Dave to the committee. He's our newest member. Do you want to just say something about yourself or?
I most people on the line, but I'm Dave Kelsey. I've lived in town, had a house in town since 2001, lived here since 2007. Board of Finance, I own an office building with my partner on Huntley. So kind of know the area of Halls Road quite a bit, and happy to be hopeful in terms of making for the town and everyone else.
Great, thank you very much. So the first order of business is going to be the BSC has some information for us for they've completed most of their phase 1 work. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael Klexman and let you go.
Okay. Thank you, Edie. Let me try to share my screen here. Okay. So hopefully you're seeing 3 pictures of the corridor. Does everybody see a sort of cover page?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just all of these platforms are different. So basically you disappeared, but I can see what I'm talking about. So that's good. So again, my name is Michael Klutchman, manager of landscape architecture for BSC Group and project manager for the Halls Road Master Plan. And as Edie said, we're basically done with our first phase, which was a basically existing conditions analysis, including market study. That we're wrapping up a draft on this right now. We still have some edits to make and some feedback from me, but we're close to be done with this deliverable. This will be wrapped into a final report section, but want to run through this. Some of the stuff will be similar to what the last presentation, and certainly we could. Anybody has a question, I guess please stop me, and we might want to review some of the things. But let me just run through some material here. So we have here is our project area from 156 Neck Road over to Lime Street, Long Halls Road, and so this is our overall context map that we did as part of our analysis. Is a base mapping of conditions, which was from available GIS and state data overlaid with our own field reconnaissance and work and drafting. So there's a lot of information on these plans. So we've broken down the corridor into sections as far as the report. Again, when this report is published, you'll be able to read the legend, but I can if anybody has questions of what's on here. So we have the the private property lines, the state right of way, existing vegetation, the highway elements, guardrails, street lights, utility poles, and things. As we go down, you'll see that where there's wetlands or flood lines, there's also on plans. We've identified light poles and traffic signals, utilities, fire hydrants, et cetera. So this plan is overlaid with an aerial image, which is also available from the state, which is geo-referenced to the some of the line work and the elevations. We also have pulled out, there is elevational information available from the state, but we've shown that where it's will be relevant with their slopes and other things, not to cloud these things too graphically. But what I was getting at is that the aerial imagery and the line work is actually fairly accurate for planning purposes. That's why we use this as a base map. So anyway, we're starting at the eastern end, and we have two windows, one to the south near 95, and then one up picking up Huntley Road. We move down the corridor, we pick up the Big Y and shopping center parking lot, and continue down the corridor to where the Dunkin' Donuts is across the street, to the Lieutenant River, the crossing, where we're starting to see, just I'll point out, some of the 100 and 500 year flood lines are on here. Again, we can go into detail on this, and when we start doing some of our planning work, we'll be blowing up areas, and this is very useful information. Finally, get across the river to the Lawrence Griswold Museum and the art station building on the end of our project area. Again, not to read through all the text, what we looked at as far as the existing conditions, we talked about what's the public way, the town streets and state-owned highway right away, and looked at pedestrian facilities within that, the existing Chamber of Commerce safety walk. We looked at bicycle facilities or lack thereof, and then we focused a description on the roadways in the project. Primarily focus on Halls Road, that it's a Connecticut Route 1, and some background on what that means for the planning process, the fact that we have to work with the state on improvements. And all this stuff to note. One question I think that they asked a while ago, and we are working with this CONDOT on a number of projects. One is even in town, and the question is, is the highway department going to be an obstacle to anything we want to achieve here from the goals we set as far as making a better connected corridor, a safer corridor, and improvements along the roadway? And so the answer is no, that they are, if you ask them for one particular thing, the crosswalk here, they do need to know the context. But if we were looking at a streetscape or a sidewalk improvement project as part of this, and we presented the plan which we'll have, which will outline the whole project, they are, it's in line with their goals. They are in, they're also a potential funding source for grants, because this is all in their program. So, and to just go back to any concern about CONDOT, yes, they have some standards and rules we need to work with, but if we can give them a cohesive plan, they actually will be a positive partner for us.
Can you say that again? I just want to make sure I heard what you said. You
Yeah.
said that if we just go and ask them for a sidewalk, they would be less receptive than if we presented a whole plan for a streetscape?
Oh, I think I said crosswalk. It's like one that they have trouble if you make a request in isolation, like I would like a crosswalk here. What they need to see is some context that it works within a plan. So if it's a sidewalk plan that looks at the whole project area and shows where existing crossings are. Let's say we wanted another crossing. I'm not sure we do. That would look unfavorably. Sidewalks, are I can't think of an instance where they'd ever have an issue with building more sidewalks. Right now, they're looking for more pedestrian connectivity, accessibility improvements. That's all. They share the same goals there. So, the only thing that they might object to, and we'll look at this. Some of the earlier visioning proposals looked at, would it be possible to use some of the I-95 right away or something of that nature? That they would probably say no. But anything along Route 1 that improves pedestrian facilities and safety, they'll be your team member.
But they don't want to see it like one crosswalk at a time. They would want to see the whole plan and then maybe grant you one crosswalk at a time.
Correct. They're not going to all, they do want to sort of, right now, if you just said, yeah, they do want to see how the whole idea of how the crossings go together. And they have standards. If you said you wanted a crosswalk at a location that was mid-block that had bad visibility, they of course will say no, that it doesn't meet their standards because somebody's going to get hit, or et cetera. But in general, if you show it part of an overall plan, all these things are reasonable things that they do every day.
So that sounds very positive.
Yeah, I mean, I think for that aspect of the project, I mean, that's the transportation side. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's more pieces. But as far as dealing with a streetscape project along Halls Road, I think we'll be in good shape.
Okay.
So the other things we looked at were all the utilities and infrastructure. We're, thinking about what could happen here. We want to know what's the electric capacity and all the utilities. So electric is Eversource, as you know, probably, and
Unfortunately.
yeah, well, and there's enough capacity for development. And they have the utility poles, which we're stuck with for now, but that's pretty standard. Natural gas, we know that there's no infrastructure for natural gas on the corridor. Street lighting is something that we've noted. There actually is very little, as I'm sure the committee is aware, of street lighting along Halls Road. I believe we counted 4 official street lights, the overhead style, in the project area. Some of the shopping centers have their own lights and the businesses, but overall, it's very dark and not safe. So that would be something if you were to go again back to the state and say we're looking at a streetscape project, and part of what you might want to do, let's say, is a program of ornamental street lights that would be an attractive feature. You could hang banners and such to the project area, but would also light the street. They don't all have to be a highway light. That's something you could put in for funding for, because that is also would address some of the safety issues that the roadway is very dark right now. It'll make it safer for pedestrians and vehicles. We looked at telecommunications and, Frontiers, the telephone company. We can read through it. They do not do fiber internet currently, but we talked to them, and given sufficient demand, that could change a lot of these things. The same with Crown Castle's high-speed fiber optic. Right now, it just goes between the cell tower, northeast project corridor, and serves larger enterprise users. But again, depending on demand, that's expandable. Comcast is there right now. The way they work is they actually work off of fiber, and then they send out the coaxial cable you're all familiar with, to units to 50 units. So there's 3 different options, you're right, if you want to expand connectivity for internet and things. Water, just, saying the obvious, is there's just well water in the area. If you're looking at expanding it, there are standards that just sort of are state tiers. So if a well serves more than 25 people over the course of, I believe, 60 days, they are under the jurisdiction of Connecticut Department of Public Health. So there's just another level of regulation, but it's no big deal. It's just to be aware of that sort of, there's thresholds that change who regulates what. The same goes for the sanitary sewer. So right now we know there's no sewer service along the corridor, and the Ledgelight Health District is the jurisdictional body which handle the installation of systems that generate 7,500 gallons or less wastewater per day. That's most likely what you have there. Right now, I think even including the system behind the big Y, it's not residential, so it's not actually that much production. So our understanding is right now, all of the systems are, the jurisdictional body is Ledgelight. Once we look at possible development scenarios, once you go above that limit, which I talked about, you start getting into deep Department of Environmental Protection starts getting their sign off as well. And then if you went to even a higher level, there's another environment department in the state that oversees it. But I don't think would be close to that. And we'll talk about the sewer later, unless anybody has questions, because I think a lot of it our planning will hinge on strategies for sewer. Drainage, again, along Halls Road, CONDOT regulates drainage. It's nothing, nothing mysterious there. There's a existing stormwater system. If you wanted to, the road need to be upgraded or changed, they require hydraulic analysis and other things, but this is, again, something we do every day, and for like the sidewalks, not a big deal.
Is there any drainage along Halls Road at all?
There are some catch basins and drain inlets that we noted on our site walk. Nothing. So I don't know if we picked them up on our plan on our base mapping, but yeah, we did. We have actually on our base mapping, we have located drainage structures that we observed. So we have those located on the plan. So we just don't, it's just helpful for the master planning process if if there's some major drainage infrastructure, which we haven't found, we just want to be aware of it. So the other piece of this, we've got the roadway and the sidewalks in the corridor and the infrastructure. And we also now have existing architecture. So from design master plan point of view, when we're looking at planning and what the character could be of the corridor, yes, we want to look at landscaping and making a nice guest zone, but really framework and sort of it's going to activate everything. Not only having plan as far as real estate and what could work, but the design of the architecture itself, not only its position, trying to create more of a village feel with buildings closer to the road and not see a parking, but the architecture itself, we've taken pictures of buildings along the corridor, and it seems like things are different, but actually when you look at the photos, it really sort of says a lot that there is most of the buildings were developed since the mid 20th century, 50s on, when this started being developed as a commercial area. There's a few older structures that have been changed, tucked here and there, but in general, we have, not to disparage the architecture, but it's some are more barnish, if you will, utilitarian, and then some have a colonial-inspired look, but they're a little boxy. I'm talking big generalizations. There are exceptions. And then there's something going on here for architectural people interested in styles and things that I'm pointing to now. If you see the Old Line Professional Center is an example of a portico, sort of this porch, extended porch with the columns, and some of these are 2 stories, like at the Dunkin' Donuts. Even the gas station kind of tries to pull off a little bit of that colonial roof. Post office, one of the nicer versions, definitely went for the colonial portico. And then we're getting into the shopping center, the Big Wide Center, where again we have the porticos. We also have this called a colonnade, this wraparound porch, which in itself is actually, I think, a nice feature. It suffers from being behind the parking lot. So again, without getting ahead of ourselves, when we look at planning options, we'd want to activate this so people would, want to walk around the edges. Because right now, I don't think many of you probably start at one end and walk all the way to the other. You may do your shopping at one side and put your groceries in and then maybe drive to the other lot, because there's no reason to walk all the way down there carrying things. But there's been a lot of effort to make this a pleasant space. So any one of these areas under the porch are nice. I think it's a matter of activating the rest of the site. And as we go down towards the Old Line Shopping Center where the Hideaway is, again, you're getting boxy, I'll say boxy architecture, not a lot of detail or design to it. Functional, again, we've got more of the porticos going on. And then as we get to the end, here's our Lime Art Association, by contrast, is a very nicely designed building. So anyway, as we go into design and making suggestions, it doesn't mean there's anything necessarily wrong with what's there now as far as function, but we would want to talk about what would we like the character to be? What else? What other buildings in town? What other examples could we bring in and guide development so that we get the character and feel that is a little more maybe human scaled instead of the larger buildings and that you'd like to see in Old Lyme. We've got all these samples. So I'll just keep going. Please stop me. So other things we looked at was signage. There's all kinds of different signs along the corridor from, the roadway signs, which are typical, but as far as the commercial and business signs, there's a large array. They're not in particularly organized. There could be a lot done to improve the standards and what is good design as far as easily read signs and something that would invite people to go to the businesses and also add to the overall character of the corridor. One thing we'll also add to this is the permanent signs are one thing. There also are a number of different attempts or versions of your temporary signs, from banners to the folding sandwich signs to all kinds of things. And whether they meet current zoning or not, the fact is they are happening. And so in this master plan, we'd like to give you some guidance on what kind of standards you might want to adopt for the corridor. So you get clear, nicely designed signage. I looked at landscaping. So street trees, there's not a lot of healthy street tree program right along the corridor. There's, these wide grass shoulders, which are okay because there's no sidewalks to walk under. But if you could imagine a sidewalk, and it would be nice to incorporate some shady street trees to go along with it. We have to be careful of the existing utility lines, but as some of these photos show, you actually have, for a streetscape project, you're actually very fortunate in that there's a very wide right-of-way that goes beyond the street edge. So there's not only room for sidewalks without having to move utility poles, which usually that's an issue, but also if you wanted to incorporate some street trees that don't get caught up in the utility lines and also don't get too close to the road.
Could be longer.
Room for that. We looked at landscape character. Again, we talked mostly lawn up to the road. There are some examples of shrubs and some of the other things. So before
I have no idea.
go back to the marking conditions, I just don't know if anyone
I think I have an idea.
what we were talking about.
Where should keep it?
Okay. So at the last meeting, Maura Cochran who was our real estate expert, went over her market conditions report. So that will be wrapped into here. That's not my personal expertise, but I'll run through it quickly for people who maybe didn't have the privilege of being on last time. So Maura looked at the existing market conditions. She toured the study area. She created a database of all the properties. She interviewed brokers and people who knew the market in town. She researched residential market availability for rents. She also interviewed any of the property owners and along the corridor and got feedback. So she had a good sort of basis to look at it. Again, we'll have detail and her data wrapped into a report, but her key findings, again, just as a repeat, were that she found that market rates for general office and retail do not support new construction, if that's what we're talking about. She did specialty spaces such as medicals or banks do. She's projecting that vacancy rates for office and retail are currently under 5%, but between her interviews and research, she expects that the trend is that there'll be more vacancy, starting in the coming year. What she did find, this is just an example, when she did this work back in the fall, that there was only one apartment for rent in Old Lyme, and there's pent up demand, which she has some more data on to back up. And and in addition, she found that newer apartments, East Line and Old Saybrook, have been built, have high occupancy rates and higher rents that justify new construction. So basically, to boil it up, if you can build nicer, newer apartments in this location, it appears that there will be demand that would pay for the cost of construction for a developer to make it work. She interviewed, again, a number of people, and these are some bullet points that went over last time. So this is from property owners. They talked about the signage. They talked about sidewalks. Town needs to have septic. That's what we'll talk about in a second. There was change in zoning to allow residential to get the mixed use into this area. Again, there's an opinion about the housing. There's suggestion of putting apartments on the second floor of retail. And then there's a call to improve the aesthetics and the look and the character. We don't have to go through all of these.
A quick question, did she go into the concept? I can understand the housing above retail. Did she go into is there demand for retail space?
Well, that's the thing. There isn't, what her finding was that she doesn't think there's demand for new retail, enough to build, there's not enough demand that would pay for somebody to build a new retail building alone. What we can talk about with her as we go forward is, there is enough demand to create apartments. Is there enough demand to do a hybrid, or, is some of what we want to look at the possibility of, for some of even the existing, can we show a study? It's not telling people what to do with their property, but can we demonstrate that you've got an existing maybe one-story retail space? If you redeveloped it with the second floor that was housing, that might work. But I think that's a good question. But I think we want to look at that as an option. I mean, it was a suggestion by one of the people who was interviewed. Now, next when we go into our planning, we can look at that as, would that actually work from a financial point of view?
So Michael,
yeah.
I think that, this is a great recap of a lot of what we heard last time.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I know one of the bigger questions on everyone's mind is what you can do to learn about different possibilities for septic systems, and where will we get with that? That's clearly, if there's any kind of mixed use, we obviously need to address the infrastructure for that particular type of question. And I'm just wondering if what you guys have figured out or what you're getting
Sure.
to from that point.
Yeah, sure. No, that's good, because that is, we've gotten to this point. We've looked at good handle on existing conditions, and have a basis for we have a canvas to start planning. Where we've come to is We think there's a good demand for housing or mixed use. We know the limitation right now is going to be septic or sewer. We know that it's tough. It's not ideal conditions for private septic along the corridor. There's either high water table or ledge in many locations. So it doesn't mean individual systems can't be built. But we think that that will be more limiting than the economics of it. So one thing we're doing is we're persisting. Legislate is not easy to get a hold of, but we're trying to get a baseline from them on systems that have been put in recently or maintained, or some of the larger systems with big Y, to understand for a typical lot or any of these locations, what kind of footprint would be necessary for a system, so we know how much space we need and what, if a, let's say a 1 acre lot there, a 2 acre lot, if most of that is a proportion of how many housing units you can have versus the size you need for the septic system. So we're going to try to come up with a ratio or a metric that's based on, we can't protest the whole, but we can get some planning basis for assumptions that, with current conditions, we may be limited to a certain square footage per lot size. And we may end up tailoring that to different parts of the corridor where we know there's high water table. That will mean one thing. Where we know there's ledge, that will be another. Where we don't know, we'll make our best assumption. So that is one thing. We know that sewers in general are not anytime in the near future. So we're not going to waste our time trying to design to an unlimited sewer capacity. We will, though, also look at, one thing we're looking at is examples such as Saybrook Station, some of the other places in the area which have done something that are a little larger than a single unit septic system. They may be small treatment facilities, if you will, that are local. They're not a full treatment plant, but there's something in between full sewers and individual septic systems, and we are investigating what that means, the cost, the sizing of all that. So there may be solutions beyond just being limited to what can be accomplished with a traditional septic system. So right now, that's where we're at, and really we need to understand that before we drop any proposals on the plan. We need to know, one, what is reasonable to assume given the current condition with the traditional septic systems, private, contained on each lot, and then what are the options for a larger community, we'll call it community septic or community treatment, that may serve more than one property, and there could be advantages there too beyond any new development. Given we know that there's difficulty in the putting in new septic systems along the corridor. Again, we are chasing legislate to get information. We also guess that there may be systems along the corridor which are failing or likely to fail, so that may be that may be a positive thing. If there was a community system, it could also support existing systems that need to be replaced, and could actually help fund the construction of something like that. But again, we are doing our research there so that we can come back to you and give you some clear guidelines for what could happen there. But I think of all of the variables, I think that is what we're starting with, because I think it's going to hinge on that, no matter what we do.
Michael, I have one question in terms of scope, because it seems to me that identifying, what market demand could be, that sort of thing, it goes to where we are right now. Everything's C30 basically, right?
Yeah.
Commercial 30, and it's pretty broad what people can do. It would be helpful if there were flexibility for either a new developer or an owner, if they saw, not our group, but they saw the demand for apartments, and this would be part of a developer's or a new owner's diligence in terms of investigating what types of treatment, small treatment plants and that sort of thing. It's a mound system actually behind Big Y. Okay. And I know from a lot of experience with developers in the area and our own experience as well, that DEEP itself is basically looking to sewer as much as they can, and they're tolerating what used to be called sewer avoidance towns. But they're not really receptive, unfortunately, to some of the modern alternatives that other states surrounding us have accepted. But so a question is, how much of the scope of your work is going to be going into the research that a developer or a new owner of a property would do themselves?
Yes, that's a good question. So,
because if it turns out that no one out there wants to buy a property and develop 10 units, then, that is what it is. We can guess what the market demand is, but I got to tell you, the economics for 10 apartment units to put them up, the rents have to be relatively high, or the subsidies have to be relatively high. So, and these properties are all currently owned privately. So there's that too. So creating that flexibility for somebody new who were to come in is important, but how far down the road do you see this scope being the work that would be incumbent upon somebody who'd like to buy a property or develop a property themselves?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm getting the question. So I mean, part of the answer is, what we're going to do, we talked about the zoning is come in, hopefully get to a point once we decide what the master plan is, what we want the standards to be, to try to suggest, whether if the conclusion is, yes, you'd like a village district zoning overlay district or something of that nature. Part of our scope is to provide you with that language that you could, use to create that in your town. And in that, what we want to sort of walk the line is we want to make sure, the things are important, the character, whatever we decide is important is reflected in it, but we want to provide flexibility for somebody to come in and make a profit and make it attractive, because if it's too onerous, nobody will come in. So that's the goal, is to create a flexible framework which still has stopgaps and regulations, whether it's an oversight design review board. Instead of saying you've got to have 12-inch soffits and tan shingles and this and that, you have some guidelines, and then you have I'm getting way ahead of it, but then you have a committee that can sort of review and give approval if it's
that's what was done down at Soundview, for example. That's a village district, SVVD,
Right. So that's where I think we're headed. Again, we'll see how this committee feels after they see designs. But as far as the the septic question, again, we keep going back to it, is we are going to research what's been done. There has been a few. I agree that Keep, in fact, has a document that is supposed to give guidelines for alternate systems. And if you look at it, it's 400 something pages, and it's actually like, wow, okay, there is a way to go. Once you get to it and try to call somebody, it's not the case. So it's,
Right.
it's like exciting, but there are examples in the area of, and I think this probably comes into ones that don't cross that threshold, that are the largest small ones that don't get regulated by deep. Like, that's something we can sort of identify that threshold, and then find out if there have been ones that have been regulated by deep, how did they do it? So we'll do that research to understand, to set sort of our master plan, back up on something. We've got to start with some recommendations, for somebody to take the master plan and look at it. And let's say we even get to the point where there's language in the zoning regulations that, one, allow for housing, allow for density, and maybe describe setbacks and different things.
Yeah, my only, and it's not a concern because this is my first meeting, but is spending a lot of time on effluent and that sort of thing, because it's also, we've got a lot of sensitive areas around there with Lieutenant River, and then there are wetlands, right directly across my office building as well. And so what may be right for one small parcel may be wrong for the one right next to it. And so putting together some options for folks is a good thing as guidance. Mm-hmm. But spending a ton of time on it, that's my question, is this going to be a week's worth of work for a couple of folks, or is it synthesizing what's already out there and giving the kind of 2 or 3 options that might be available for this specific area?
I really appreciate that. It's the second case, because that's, like we said, in the process of learning the regulation out there, we've made all these calls. Really, we're just trying to get that, feedback from Ledge Light, a little bit of information, just to do that summary and sort of say, these are the possible options. But we can't engineer the whole thing.
Yeah, and then those options, potential zoning changes, because if there are options that are not standard septic tank and leach field, then your requirements for lot size could go down a little bit, that sort of thing, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's a variance process, really. I think that's.
I will tell you that going through this entire process, the sewer process over the last 12 plus years that I've been involved with down in the Federation of Beaches in Old Lyme and Soundview, Miami, Ocala, Old Lyme Shores, there's no question that, in my opinion and my experience, is that there's certainly Ledge Light will dictate what's acceptable and what's not. DPH will weigh in as well. But we have found that the capacity for New London to accept an additional waste, whether it's 100 to 300,000 gallons a day, really dictates whether even a sewer system can be entertained. And we fortunately, the beach associations now, after 10 plus years, we have a consent agreement through DEP in New London to accept the wastewater, and we have hopefully shovels in the ground in the spring. But it's been a tremendous effort just to get Ledge Light, as you said, Mike, to get Ledge Light to weigh in to some of the regulations of the property owners that have wells that are inside of the 75-foot radius
Yeah.
Of a sewer line. And if they are, they have to abandon the well. So we've had to come with visions and put what's called CE 900 piping in. It's double insulation pipe, so folks can keep their wells. It's at a different added expense. But my understanding up to this point, several years into it, is that there's no more capacity in New London to accept sewage east
Yes.
of East Lyme or west
Yeah.
of East.
Yeah. I mean, that plus that this, running a sewer line through here is not, I think, anybody's goal. So,
And
we
certainly,
have to look
there's
at
no way.
alternatives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no way to increase the capacity of retail without additional.
Yeah. So that's why we want to just look at what the alternatives are. So at least we know what options could happen. And you bring up the other thing that is challenging in the fact that on well water, so that makes everything tough for putting in septic, because even not in the sewer line, as many folks know, if you're putting in a new septic field, you've got to be a distance from a well, so it's a one more factor.
Michael, to go back to what you were saying before, I think what I heard was that we're sort of grandfathered in with the septic systems that we have, but if we were going to do any kind of new construction, it would have to get reconsidered, and ultimately you're going to talk to Ledge Light, but you think Ledge Light would probably want a sewer to replace the septic?
Yeah, I don't think we're talking about sewers, so let me just be clear. We're not talking
Okay.
about sewers. What I would bring up is that there's something in between a private septic system that's on one lot, there's one building, and a complete sewer. There are community septic homes, so that there are systems that are basically mini treatment plants. So,
Yeah.
and they could fit on some of the larger lots or somewhere else, and so they could serve more than one, or one larger. Let's say it's a new development. So there actually is, besides the water, wastewater being infiltrated into the ground like a traditional septic system, and then pumped out regularly of the solid, there actually is a mechanical pretreatment that happens on site. It doesn't get sent to New London. It's not building a full-blown sewer treatment plant, but it's a smaller treatment. And then, so those are some of the things that, as Dave was saying, that are happening in other states, but also they are happening in Connecticut. And there are examples of these in other towns. And so that's what we'll have, as examples is a couple of these to look at and going, okay, this one over, we're looking at what old Saybrook Station is. It's a larger development. We don't know exactly what they did, but that is on our list as our next thing to figure out what they did to build that density over there, knowing they don't have a sewer there. So they had to do something innovative. So we're trying to learn from other folks.
Okay, so I think we're getting on to 8 o'clock here. So I think maybe unless you have other things to add to this, anybody, maybe we could let Michael head out and we can finish up the meeting. Does that work for everyone, or?
This is Nutmegger. Is it? I don't know the etiquette of the meeting. My name's Anthony Vasilio. My Nutmegger is just my screen name. Can I ask a question or two before Michael leaves? Ask him a comment or something? Oh, thank you. I thank you, Madam Chairman. Michael, what I'm interested in is a couple of things that you might be able to comment on. And I will tell you that I've read the OLM economic development study and the plan of development for the community. So I'm trying to put together all these documents. So the first thing is that I see a great void in any group addressing the issue of resiliency. All along the coast of Connecticut and most of the East Coast, communities at very, very high cost are starting to do resiliency planning. And as it was indicated tonight, you already have water issues in terms of high-level water tables and very sensitive estuaries and other areas. Can you comment on what impact resiliency might have and the potentially high costs of protecting the downtown area if we got into redeveloping it? So that's my first question. My second one is, could you comment a little bit on the comments of the plan of development, which talks about the tremendous uncertainty that will for years affect the housing and commercial development due to pandemic and the rapidly changing demographics of communities that are being affected by this pandemic. And it may go forward for many, many years into the future, not just be short-lived by next summer. And then maybe comment a little bit about how did these three documents come together, this committee, the plan of development, and I understand what plan of development is, and the Old economic development study. It just seems to be a lot of moving parts. And as a new person into this process, it makes it a little difficult to bring them all together because I don't know, what everyone's role is. And I want to thank the chairwoman for allowing me to speak. And I did go down to City Hall when this committee made its presentation, and I might have met Mike. So thanks for letting me speak tonight. And this is an area I have great interest in, both personally and professionally in my life. So now that I'm in Old Lyme, I'm glad you allowed me to participate. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, those are some big questions. I can maybe handle some. So resiliency, I'm glad you asked that. There are things we can look at it when we plan that are pretty basic. We look at flood elevation, things of that nature. We can talk about things like hardening utilities. There's all kinds of ways to look at resiliency for even stormwater management. We're not, the quarters aren't on the coast, but there is effects of managing stormwater. We're talking about drainage before. When we look at landscape developments of the corridor, we could look at things such as green infrastructure, infiltrating stormwater into the ground instead of hard piping it. There are things that can be incorporated in development, which actually add resiliency. Again, we can, if the committee's interested, that could be part of, in the end, standards that come. I mean, there already are for new buildings. Resiliency is sort of being built into the code, but if that became an important part of what is desired, you want to allow economic success and development, but there are things you can add if you want to add resiliency for building types. Certainly flood elevation is large, and at least one part of this site. And again, stormwater management are things that could be built into any master plan. So that's a good question. Again, and you're right, it could come with a cost, but as long as we have that conversation, we can decide how we want to address it, but we should address it. The next question about the pandemic, I think, part of what we found, and again, you weren't on the last meeting, we went through our real estate interviews and analysis. And we were seeing the results already in that I was talking about the retail and office vacancies. We expect that to rise. Where we're seeing a difference though is in housing, and that's not just in Old Lyme, that's in general. We're seeing housing is one sector that is not hurting right now in the pandemic. People still need to live somewhere, and you talk about the changing demographic. People are still getting older and still maybe wanting to move out of their single family homes, find spots where they can park places. So
I will tell you, and I'll interject in there just to
yeah,
add to the housing market as a licensed broker for Sotheby's. I work out of the Halls Road office and Essex Main Street office, and our studies have shown that the demand is going to go beyond 18 months with regards to inventory. Of course, what sets the market is supply and demand, and the demand is high, the supply is very low. I personally oversee the 12 apartments for rent on Lime Street, which rented just like that, and we still have an extremely high demand, not just in state, coming out of state. We've had nearly 8,000 New Yorkers change their address to Connecticut in 6 months.
Well, you can see all the New York license plates around.
Yeah, and that's not stopping. We have a pent-up demand of homes. We have a lot of buyers, very few houses, very few inventory. And our stats show that that's going to continue for the better part of 12 to 18 months.
Oh, yeah.
Add to
I think
that,
it may continue even longer than that because people are figuring out you don't have to work and live in a big city.
right. So to
Well-
add to that, in terms of retail, the one sector in retail that is surviving is the retail that's mixed use, that's mixed with a lively village district where people can walk and live and be right next to the store and their apartment or condo, whatever they're living in. That's one of the few things that is surviving. Strip malls and shopping centers, that kind of stuff are emptying out. So that's another reason why, if there is a way to make it work to have some residential right on Halls Road, we could reinvent what used to be the core of Old Lyme, which was Lime Street. So that is why that's a key piece to this. With the amount of demand for housing right now and no solutions in place in the town, this is a good place to focus for that.
You're 100% right, and it's a perfect storm for an environment for an increased settlement, if you will, of a population when you intervene that with storefronts and because, like you said, the big boxes are going to the wayside, but what is not is the American Main Street.
Mhm.
And the more you can build on Main Street and support your businesses, the infrastructure, it's just a perfect storm of increased tax bases, people moving into the area, and that becomes a supply and demand scenario. The fact is, what dictates, what regulates, what allows us to build an infrastructure of that uh, is the utilities that it can serve.
Mhm.
And one of the three utilities that we don't have is, as we've been speaking, is wastewater and getting rid of sewage. And that will dictate on what we can build. We certainly can't build up.
Yep. Yep.
Unless some of the regulations through Ledge Light and DPH allows us, and DEP will have to weigh in because it's a state road. So yeah, on the surface, it's a wonderful. I think it's a perfect storm for a wonderful fit to change really, and it doesn't have to change the limescape, if you will, that we're all used to and we all love,
Yeah.
but it can certainly enhance it.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we do need to kind of move this meeting along because we do have, want to finish it up and keep going here. So I think, Michael, we appreciate your time being here and helping us with these questions and working out what you're working out for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. No, thank you, everyone. And yeah, no, we're going to get into the septic systems and come back out and tell you what we find. So
Okay.
we'll see you on the
Great.
other side. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Take care. Okay, so I think the next thing on our agenda is the question of signage. And I took the liberty of talking with Dan Moret about the signage along the Hideaway area where there's a ton of little A-frame signs everywhere. And I put together a suggestion of something that we might be able to do that would consolidate those signs, because we certainly don't want to make it harder for the stores that do exist in that area by getting rid of their signs, which they are illegal. They should only be there for 30 days, but we don't want to make it so that they can't show that they're open. So, and I'm working with a sign maker that's done a lot of work in Old Lyme to get us some numbers on what kind of signage we could possibly do. I can show you guys a suggestion of what I'm talking about. So this is just a brief idea. So instead of having all these signs hanging around all over the place, maybe we make a fairly temporary sign that's on the property for the shopping center. And I just want to see, how do I get to the next thing? This would be a very simple sign, aluminum posts with some signage that the folks that have the businesses would probably pay for that, for their signage. And then also I thought it might be worthwhile to make a suggestion to the property owner of another replacement for their existing sign that's there today. It's something that doesn't make the Old Lyme Shopping Center the biggest sign on the list. Right now, this is what we have, and you can barely read anybody's signs on it. So I just thought I would share that with you guys. Hopefully I did that.
You did.
Okay. Now I got to figure out how to get out of this. How do I get that out of there?
And Edie, you said the excuse me, the idea is that the business owners would pay for this at the town?
Yeah, my suggestion would be to go to these 3 or 4 places and say, look, it's actually illegal to be having these signs up for more than 30 days. They've been up there all year. We don't want to make it hard on you, but, and I would have, that's why I'm asking a sign maker to give me a price on this idea so that we could actually find out what's possible and whether people would want to pay for something like this.
Yeah, and it's typically the town doesn't pay for signage. They regulate the size and all that stuff. There's a strict sign regulation in the zoning. Like they can't be backlit, although they can be frontlit.
Right.
So having a sign lit from the ground, spotlight is permissible, but you can't have a neon backlit sign.
Right.
In the square footage. But you're right, it is the tenant pays for the signage.
Right.
But I think it's a great idea, Edie.
So that's one thing I just wanted to show you guys. I'm having a hard time figuring how to get this share to stop. Where do I get out of that?
I think they're very attractive signs, and it'd be a good idea.
There you go.
If they'd step in. Uh-oh.
No, I stole it from her, so now I can stop sharing, and then there you go. I did it for you. I stole sharing from you, and then I turned it off.
Yeah, so I thought I wanted to share that idea with you guys, and I think from what I understand from Dan, he's certainly not going to stop us from doing this because he's too busy with other things. And I did show him what I'm thinking about, and I think I do know that about 2 years ago, I spoke with the property manager at the Old Lyme Shopping Center, and she was saying they were looking at trying to fix the signage, but then they did nothing about it. So there might even be an interest to fix their main sign. I don't know. So,
They should get rid of the main sign, in my
oh
opinion.
God, it's so ugly, you know, it's like, but, yeah,
Sure is.
so I think, you know, it might be worth approaching the business owners and seeing if they were interested. So I just want to show you those ideas. And then the other question was, we were thinking of doing a work party, and I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts about dates on whether we could actually make this happen. I think it's a great time of year to do this because it's fairly dry, and we can get down there into that area, maybe get rid of those weird little flower pots and the lampshade that's sitting on the flower pot right now and some of that crazy stuff. Um, I was throwing out either the last Saturday of January or the beginning of February, and be great if anyone wants to weigh in on that. I'm also asking some folks from the EDC if they want to help out on that. It's great to ask other friends that you might know that might be willing to come down. And we had quite a big group the first time we did this. I know, Bud, you were there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, where is the area you're talking about?
I'm talking about the same area. I think it just needs to be finished.
Oh, okay.
Down so close to the river part.
Okay, oh, yes.
And there are still more things to kind of clean up in there. It's certainly not as much garbage as the day we went there.
Oh, yeah, that was,
But I'd love to pick a date and try and get to it and have a backup rain date and see what we can do about it.
I think that's a great idea, Ian. I was thinking about it and talking with a few board members for the Federation of Beaches, and we could solicit this. You know, there's a fair amount of folks, not just summer people, but people who've started living on the beaches year round, who I think would be very much in favor of participating in this.
Great. Okay.
And we have access to those folks' emails, and you know, after speaking with a couple of board members, we could solicit
Okay.
that.
Well, maybe I'll put together a little invitation and send it around. And I mean, does anyone feel like that it's too soon to do it at the end of January, or any dates for folks? Oh wait, Dave, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I think it's going to be weather dependent, but it always will be. So
Yeah.
once you set the date, and you know, People of Old Lyme is a great place to
Yeah.
get folks who do cleanups, you know, in the spring and early summer and stuff. And
Yeah.
then, you know, have Owen do a little piece in Line, and I mean, you end up with 15 or 20 people pretty easily, I think.
oh,
Yeah,
we had a
yeah.
pretty good crowd a
Yeah.
couple of years ago.
Yeah, we had it, and we didn't.
I remember
even
driving by you
advertise,
guys.
so I don't think we want
I,
so many
I
people.
apologize for not helping, but
Okay, well that sounds good. I will act on that. And I had one other piece of information that I think we all should know about, which is another thing that Dan shared with me was that the Big Y is interested in purchasing the 2 lots of property on either side of Essex Savings Bank. They own those properties. And they want to put in a Big Y Express gas station and convenience store there. They got access is 156 and Halls Road. So I'm not sure where we all stand on that. I did talk with Paul Orzell about whether the Halls Road Improvement Committee can make any recommendations to wait till we have our master plan before we start okaying such a thing, or whether we cannot okay another gas station right on Halls Road. So, you know, I don't know what any of your thoughts are about that, but it's kind of a big deal in my mind about what's going on.
But my understanding was that deal is either on hold or has fallen apart. They've been doing their diligence for, I think, 6 months this point. But the broker who's got the listing is over in Essex, and
Okay.
she's been pretty tight-lipped about things. So
Yeah, she's actually my partner, Susan.
yeah.
Okay.
So, well, you probably can't say anything even if you knew, right?
Yeah.
But at any that was the word on the street as of about 2 weeks ago or so. So confirmation one way or the other. If it is potentially moved forward, it obviously has an impact on the committee's mission. So
Yeah. Yeah. And what I heard from Dan was that they were going to present to the Inland Wetlands Commission. Is that what I'm thinking of? They tried to do that a month ago and they didn't have enough material. So now they have a full plan that shows exactly what they're trying to do. And it's a little daunting, a little worrisome. But, you know, obviously they'd have to go through a lot of channels to get it to happen. But at the same time, we want to make sure we're not building things willy-nilly without a plan ahead of time. So this is exactly what we're trying to be careful about. So.
Do we want that in the minutes? I feel like I'm going to leave that comment out of the minutes.
Okay.
the minutes don't have to be that detailed.
Yeah, no, I know. As I started typing, and then I was like, well, I don't know if I want that. You know, I just didn't. I typically write what we talk about, but I don't think I want it. I don't think I want that going out
Into the public
discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I think on that point, that's probably everything I have. Does anyone else have anything they want to contribute to the? I did want to introduce Stephen Calcagni, who is new to town and interested in joining the board. And Steve, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself, or just?
Yeah, I guess I'll give you a really brief. It's been a long meeting, but so I was in real estate for about 30 years, ran a brokerage up in the Cheshire area. Recently moved to town, joined the Open Space Commission, and very interested in I would say the center of town. I live on Library, not just selfishly, but you know, my wife grew up in this town, and I think it's just extraordinary. Want to make it even better, tweak it more than turn it upside down. But the area between Halls Road, Lime Street, and then Ferry Road and 156. That square, from a walkability standpoint, from a services standpoint, I think could use the kind of work that you guys are doing. So I'm glad to help in any way, and it's been nice to listen to everyone's comments tonight.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah,
Welcome, Steve.
thank you.
So should we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Quickly, Edie, can I just say Happy New Year to everybody? And I wanted to also welcome Dave Kelsey to our committee, him having his business on Halls Road and being so involved in Old Lyme. I'm so pleased that he's on the committee with us. And I also, regarding BSC, do we have any access to read the documents that they shared tonight? I just wanted to.
Yes.
Okay.
We put the document they shared last time on the
Yes.
website, on the town website, and we can also put this one on as well.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah, because you
Great.
couldn't read it. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Looked like it was interesting. So that's
Yeah.
it. But thank you.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Anyone want to second Bud's motion to adjourn?
I'll second it.
Okay. So moved, and it is 8:23, and we are done with our meeting. So thank you very
Well
much,
done.
guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.